Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, maybe for some one of us. We're happy to see you here at our webinar on the topic how RBA can join a project where there's no existing documentation, which is held on behalf of global BA community. And let me introduce our today's speaker, Daria Naumova, Senior Business Analyst. Hi, Daria.
Hi, Katya. How are you today?
Great. I guess that I'm just waiting for the great presentation and webinar from your side regarding such a useful tips for all of us, I guess.
That's great, actually.
Yeah. Okay, let's give a couple of minutes to join us, and
Yeah,
maybe I can provide some short intro and a couple of additional moments from our Global Bay community side. So, I suppose that today we would like to uncover the secret tips and tricks of navigating unknown territories as we dive into the art of working on projects without documentation, and a couple of additional moments from our Global Bay community side. The session has been recorded, and the recording will be available on our community YouTube channel. So please join and stay up to date. And after our presentation, we will have a Q&A session. You can send questions to the chat or leave them on the agenda page. So feel free to ask your questions or express your opinion. And now I guess that we can start our webinar. Daria, the floor is yours.
that's great. Could you please add my... Yeah,
Sure.
that's great. Thank you, Katya.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, let's get started. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm Daria Naumova, as I've been already introduced. Currently, I'm working as a senior business analyst at EPAM, and today's topic is how ABA can join a project where there is no existing documentation. And before we begin, a short introduction of myself with some quick facts. I have over 5 years of experience as business analyst, system analyst, and project manager. And prior to joining EPAM, I led a department of BAs and CAs consisting of 45 plus analysts. And also, I have 2 years of experience in hiring BAs and CAs, building BA teams, and onboarding and developing business analysts, and also have an experience in establishing templates and processes for the BA team. And currently, I'm working as a product owner for the stream, for one of the stream in our project, and also as a KBA in this project. And today, it's actually my pleasure to discuss with you the scenario of joining the project without any existing documentation or with the lack of it, and outline the steps which BA should take in such situation. Moving to goals and objectives of this presentation, I will provide a brief overview of the scenario in which BA joins the existing project, which is either already delivered on production or developed already or in development yet, but it lacks documentation. And moving to the next hour agenda is it will be a kind of case study where we will define the situation where the documentation is absent. Also, we'll cover some potential risks and threats and challenges of joining the project where there is no documentation. And then I will provide you some advices and strategies for covering all these risks for these approaches. And also I will share a small example in my practical experience where I was in that situation and how I deal with it. And yes, as Katerina already said, we will have a Q&A session in the end. So let's start with the goals and objectives of the presentation. And the first primary goal is actually to share the strategies and practical steps, how to engage and how to navigate project as a BA in the absence of any pre-existing documentation. And the second one is to recognize potential changes and pitfalls and learn how to avoid and to overcome them if you face the situation where there is no existing documentation in the project, and you should deep dive into it and prepare the new requirements. So let's start with the case description in order to understand the problem and to be on the same page. So let's imagine then BA was assigned to a project and this project is already in the development phase, and some part of its scope is already delivered. And this project didn't have at all any existing documentation or some short summaries from the development team. Uh, the project development entirely relies on the knowledge mostly shared by team members and stakeholders verbally or through some fragmented pieces of the information. And this information is present in different emails, notes, information discussions. So no any general specific place somewhere information is, but not the generalized place for the all documentation. And BA role in this case is quite challenging. Challenging scenario was to understand the project objectives and deliverables and continue the preparation of the requirements for the new features, plus, of course, supporting the team and answering questions related to the current functionality. Sounds, I assume, tricky one. And I think that somebody of you has already been in this situation. So let's jump into the risk and pitfalls which BA might face. I assume, of course, we all, our BA community understands that some level of documentation should be always present. But if we jump into the previous mentioned case, for the successful delivery, BA should allocate some time to, of course, prepare the documentation for the existing logic and, of course, for the future features to be successfully implemented. And regardless, let's revisit the primary risks that might encounter which continuing to work on the project without the documentation. And the first risk is incomplete understanding of the project scope. So without documentation, understanding of the entire scope of the project can be quite challenging and leads to unrealistic expectations. The second risk is a breakdown in communication flow, of course, because lack of documentation can lead to miscommunication, causing confusions and slowing down the progress. And the third one is about imperfections in requirements gathering. Of course, without a proper documentation, there might be some inconsistencies in understanding the project requirements. And also, let's jump to the next couple of risks, which I would like to share with you. It's about roles and responsibilities that sometimes can be confusing, it can be unclear, and documentation usually outlines these roles and tasks, and of course the absence of it can cause the confusion over the responsible persons. And also the next risk can be mentioned is about the challenges in tracking and managing projects. So lack of documentation makes it hard to track the progress, to manage resources, to maintain the project schedule effectively, and so on. Also, we might face with time management difficulties. Also, if the processes are not documented, the requirements also, more time can be spent on clarifications, leading to some inefficiencies, of course. And the last one, which I would like to cover, is elevated risk of errors and oversights, of course. It might lead, of course, to mistakes and oversights, and they can occur even more often if we do not have the documented processes and requirements. So if the risk is covered, we have the list associated with the working on project without documentation. We should bear in mind that these risks may become fully or partially realized in the project or the team, and the new BA should understand the challenge of joining such project. And now let's also take a look at challenges. on the project which lacks the existing documentation. I would like to start with identifying the existing processes. It can be a quite challenge because without any written guidelines, it can be difficult and time consuming to onboard and to actually work and prepare requirements for this project. Also, we might face the miscommunication like a challenge because lack of documentation also can lead to different interpretations and confusions around the project goals and requiremms. Also, if we are talking about the absence of historical data, we also might face this challenge as a BA because without documentation, understanding historical decisions, past mistakes and successes, underlying reasons and behind certain choices is also quite challenging. If we will talk about the unclear roles and responsibilities, documentation often clarifies the team roles and its responsibility. And if it is absent, there can be a kind of confusion. Some people can duplicate the work, you can duplicate the work of the previous BA, which were unnecessary, and so on. And also, we may talk about redundancy of work without some clear notes, without the clear records. There is often the huge risk, as you know, of repeating. Also, the of duplicating. Right, it can be also a quite challenge. And a couple of challenges to cover related to the some challenges and difficulties when a new team member, for example, join, or when handing over the project. Lack of documentation can make this transition and onboarding process even harder. And when we are talking about the quality control, when you verify the quality of the huge project, it's kind of challenge also because you do not have the kind of aligned list of criteria or requirements in the single place. And the last challenge, which we also should consider when joining such project where there is no documentation at all or lack of it. Its challenges about depends on the individual knowledge. So it can individuals who know something or remember details can present or can even not. And if even the person who works on the project quite long knows something, there can be not the true point, as you know. So he might forget some details, do not remember some decisions, and all this data also is kind of risky and sometimes can be not suitable and correct. So when we cover the risks and understand the challenges, it's half of our work to understand it. And now we would like to cover what BA can do and what are the strategies for approaching a project without existing documentation, what actually BA should do. The first point which I would like to cover, from which it can be started working on such project from BA side, is to requesting team members for introductory sessions. Of course, this data can be not full, can be some points can be corrupted and interpreted in another sense, but actually these points can be useful, and I do advise you to make notes and to record the meeting. The second point which I advise is to develop a kind of mind map of systems primary functions, function blocks, to understand what features, what blocks, modules the system has on a high level. It will help you to understand how it's connected. The third thing is about the reviewing of the scope of the current tasks and stories, and it will help you to identify which blocks may need your intermediate attention or require a deeper understanding. Also, I do ask you to seek the project manager's permission to allocate your time on documenting the current tasks and provide the approximate estimation of its activity. When you are starting working on this first task on your project, for example, you already have a kind of overview and you should do as soon as possible one practical task and prepare the requirements. Please explain your project manager to that you need more time to provide some documentation for the current task, plus a little bit related to the module, to the function, to this practical task. Maybe it will be useful for you to ask developers for assistance in the creating documentation by code. And also point which I advise you to do as the next one is to explain, of course, to your project manager, to a product manager, to your maybe lead BA if you have one, and to align with them that it is really important to create a kind of base documentation, and also you can highlight the risk which we mentioned before. Also, I would like to share the next action item. It's about the getting the access to the scope of the future tasks. Also, when you have from the previous points mind map and you already reviewed the future backlog, please, the current backlog, also please take a look at the future tasks and understand what functional blocks again affected by upcoming features and the factor in the time needed to document the current implementation. Please include this time to your estimates of the future tasks. Also, I would like to highlight one more time that even documentation for the current task, even for the future task, I do advise to request the help from the QA and dev team, and because they will help to understand the functional logic, and while you're reading the test cases, the dev plans, it will also may help you to understand the full picture of the current task or the task which were already implemented. Also, the next point, of course, is advised to test the main scenarios on staging or test environments some personally. I do advise you to, when you prepare this mind map with the functional block, understand the key scenarios and test it by your own. It also will help you to understand what is going on, and also it will be easier for you to, for example, then read the test scenarios, test cases, and then prepare the documentation. And the last advice is avoiding the multitasking as much as possible when you're just onboarding to the project and there is no up-to-date documentation. It can be quite mess, and I do advise you to initially focus on functional blocks related to the current task and refrain from trying to cover the entire system scope at once. If you see the huge scope, please focus on the current task and functional block which is affected by it. If you have some neighbors from the functional block which are affected by that, also highlight it, but not as much. Focus on the goal. So that was the so we cover the advices and tips and strategies for dealing with the onboarding and adaptation and involvement to the project where we face this situation. And now I would like to share you a little bit the practical example from my experience in order to understand how practically you can use these advices and tips which we discussed before on the previous slides. A few years ago, when I was a BA in another company, I was actually involved in a banking related project, and it's already exists for 5 years. And the last time where the documentation was written was during the discovery phase, and of course it was not up to date at all. And furthermore, we had a kind of significant scope of the new features that needed to be implemented in the short time, and documentation also needed to be provided to them. And when I just involved to the project, of course, I was in quite shock, because a lot of functions, a lot of data, no one knows the truth, and only developer can make a kind of intro or tour by working on the code and watching how it works. And I've just started with the modeling the system's main function as a mind map, as I advised, to understand what we already have and what is the dependencies. Also, I've discovered that through all these functional blocks, we have the status model of the main entities, and it significantly affects not only the current state of the system of each block, but also the main point was that my current tasks which to be done are affected also by this workflow. And together with the dev team, we documented the business flow via the diagram, and also we documented the data flow, and it helped us a lot to understand the dependencies. I would like to highlight that these diagrams helped us to communicate it more effectively also, because the huge document, the huge Confluence speech at that point was a kind of confusing, and it was really comfortable to communicate via blocks which we are added to our mirror boards, and will help us. It helped us to speed up. And uh, after we had these diagrams, I prepared the requirements for each task and updated the flow and mind map, adding some sub functions. And for each function, after that, we created a brief functional and non-functional requirements where I discovered the related topics. And when we have a kind of huge tree, of course, we documented it into KB page, to Confluence page, and presented all this stuff to development and to QA team one more time for final review. We made the final corrections, and all these artifacts, mainly these diagrams, became a kind of starting point of our main documentation. And after we had this kind of base, we were ready to prepare the new stories. And actually, it speed up us a lot, because everybody knows where to find the info. And if somebody get some new facts, some new input, how it works, they just added this info to our diagram. Uh, I think, yeah, we need to conclude and leave some time for our Q&A session. So I would like to sum all the advices and tips up, and to share their conclusions with you. What we know from the practical cases and from the tips, that we should start documentation and creating documentation from the moment which you joined. Yeah, before there were no documentation, but when you join, when you understand the importance of presence of the documentation, please do the document. Yeah, and also I advise, of course, to record every decision, every process, and meeting outcome. It will be easier for you than to remind yourself what should be added to your mind map. Also, I do advise organize information and how it worked in our case. So we created one diagram, one space, and everybody knows where to find and be able to add this information. And of course, future referencing, it will be easier. Also, the third point is about encouraging the team participation. So do not hesitate to involve the team into the documentation. You're working in team, it's a teamwork. So it will help you to speed up, to see the information from the different points and distribute the responsibility, of course. And the last point is about review and update. Continuously review, edit, and update. The small piece that you created at first even should be reviewed. So do not wait till all the documentation will be written and then pass to review. Also give to review the small pieces, the starting point. That's actually was it for today's presentation. I hope this overview has informed you how to deal. What challenges would you face in such cases? What risks could be present, and some tips for now how to deal with it, and what will be the starting point for you if you face this situation. So I would like to say you thank you for this attention, for your time. I wish you, of course, good luck in this initiative if you will join such project, and wish you all the best. Thank you so much one more time for your attention. I would like to finish. Katya, maybe we have some questions already.
Yes, we have some questions. I guess that I can remove our presentation for a sec.
Yeah.
We have a couple of different questions, and I guess that we can sum up them into the following. What is the relevant documentation that you can suggest to start with? Who defined this set of documentation, and what to do if the customer doesn't agree to start with this documentation?
Uh, let's focus firstly on first part, then the second related to the customer. The first part is related to the what artifact should be created and who is responsible, right? So about artifacts, as I mentioned, I advise you to start with a kind of mind map with the functional blocks, the main functional blocks. It will help you to see the overview, and then while discovering, you will add the details to each functional block and add the links between them. It will be fast to do, faster than creating a kind of the whole specification, right? And it will be a kind of visualization, easy to communicate and share for the review. About the responsibility, of course, when we are talking about requirements documentation, it's a BA, but as I mentioned, you are working in team. Please align with your project manager. Please align with your developers and QAs because they already worked on this project and they know some details. But the source of truth, the main responsibility, of course, on BA side, and you as a initiative person, can propose the solution and explain the benefits, like I already explained to you, why we should start with this mind map. And the last point regarding the customer, of course, I understand that many of us working on the fixed price project, and customer is not cannot even have the enough resources to write the documentation. But there I advise you to collaborate with your project manager and try to explain why the documentation is needed. And in half of I would say 50% of customers will understand you. If no way to, for example, write the documentation for the previous functionality and you are short in time and have deadlines and so on, please include this time to update the documentation, to create it in your future tasks to your estimation. If you are aligned with project manager, it will be okay to explain it to the customer why too much time for it, because we need the background for the new requirements. And also, if we want to make the documentation now, even after the couple of months, we will also face the same situation. So the idea was to collaborate with your project manager, with your customer, to explain why we need now the documentation, because in the future it will speed up the process a lot. Hope
Yeah,
I
maybe
answered.
Yeah, maybe I also can add that you can try to create something like a demo or the general idea of your artifact and then present them to the customers or stakeholders. And in my cases, they always said that that's great, that really can help us. And yes, we can try to allocate some time for you in the future for documentation preparation. So it also can be something like a
Yeah,
ticket.
thank you, Katya. That's really great. When you have covered not only by the words, I have a kind of demo presentation with what you planned and what benefits you will have. It's a kind of so you are selling your
Yeah.
documentation. It works actually great. Yeah, because documentation is a huge benefit, right?
Correct. And you can align this with the business needs. So from
Yeah,
the business
yeah,
perspective, they always will understand it in a
yeah,
more proper way.
yeah.
And maybe
Agreed.
one quick question. Which questions you find most relevant to ask on the kickoff session of such projects? What
Uh,
questions should we start from?
uh, if project has no documentation and you need to kick off some new requirements, right?
I guess yes.
uh, of course, you need to be prepared for the kickoff. Let's start with it. You should have a kind of background, so you do not need to start with the what is the function, what functions do you have. You should firstly to discover all the data which already present in short, maybe have a kind of fast tour through the system. And there no ideal question first question for the kickoff session, but I advise you to go with some materials where you maybe have a draft of this mirror scheme already, or if no data at all and no access to the system, okay, you will start with the goal and the main scenario. And also I advise you as when you kick off first time some feature where is no documentation, align on the goal of the meeting and goal of the feature firstly.
Thank you, Daria, for your answers. I cannot see any other questions, so I guess that we can close our Q&A session. And now I want to thank our speaker for such wonderful session and for sharing your experience and knowledge with our audience. And I also would like to thank our audience for joining and asking questions. It was a really great conversation and great webinar for all of us. Thank you
Thank
all
you.
and see you soon at our webinars.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.